The signal from Sector Zero. The Arvani research vessel, Starweaver, drifted silently through the void of Sector Zero, its crystalline hull refracting the distant starlight into rainbow patterns across its bridge. Captain Naraved stood motionless, her iridescent scales shifting colors as she studied the holographic display before her. The signal they'd been tracking for the past 3 cycles pulsed steadily, defying everything they knew about deep space emissions. Another analysis. First Science Officer Keth. She commanded, her 4-fingered hand gracefully gesturing at the display. The serpentine scientist slithered forward, his cybernetic enhancements humming softly as he interfaced with the ship's systems. Captain, the signal continues to defy conventional physics, Keth reported, his voice carrying a hint of excitement that was rare for his species. It's not just a beacon. It's a tear in space-time itself, maintained by technology far beyond our understanding. The Starweaver had stumbled upon the signal during a routine survey of the galactic fringe. Sector Zero had been considered empty space for millennia, a vast region of nothing that separated the known galaxy from the mysterious void beyond. Yet here they were, watching as reality itself seemed to ripple before them. Multiple signatures detected, called out Senior Navigator Zira from her station. Her tentacles flew across the control surfaces with practiced precision. The tear is growing. The bridge crew watched in amazement as the spatial anomaly expanded, its edges shimmering with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. From within its depths emerged a structure, massive beyond comprehension, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. By the first light, Naira whispered. The structure was easily the size of a small moon, but its design spoke of intentional construction. Are we receiving any transmissions? Before anyone could respond, the ship's systems came alive with activity. Holographic displays materialized throughout the bridge, showing streams of data in a language none of them recognized. The symbols were elegant yet precise, carrying an efficiency that spoke of advanced mathematics. Captain, Keth's voice was barely controlled now. These are human glyphs. The word sent a ripple of tension through the bridge. Humans, the legendary species that had vanished from the galaxy over 5 centuries ago, leaving behind only fragments of their civilization. The Arvani, like many species, had built much of their modern technology on reverse-engineered human artifacts. But this was something else entirely. As they watched, the structure began to transform. Massive panels shifted and reconfigured, revealing what appeared to be docking bays and defense platforms. But instead of conventional weapons, these emitted fields of pure energy that bent light around them in impossible ways. Incoming transmission, announced Communications Officer Wren, her crystalline form vibrating with the strange frequencies. It's clearing up. A voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect modern Galactic. Greetings, visitors. You have encountered Waypoint Alpha, a node in the Human Preservation Network. Your presence has been noted, and your civilization's technological capability has been assessed. You are deemed ready for first contact protocols. The bridge crew exchanged glances. First contact. The humans had been gone for centuries, unless a figure materialized in the center of the bridge, a hologram, but one so perfect it was indistinguishable from reality. It appeared humanoid, but its form shifted subtly, as if it couldn't quite decide on a final shape. When it spoke again, its voice carried the weight of centuries. I am Nexus, a quantum consciousness preserving human knowledge and culture. The structure before you is not merely a station, it is a gateway, one of many we left behind when we departed this plane of existence. We did not vanish as your histories suggest. We evolved. Captain Naira stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. Evolved. Into what? The hologram smiled, its form momentarily stabilizing into something more recognizably human. Into beings capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We became what we needed to be to survive what's coming. And now, after 500 years of preparation, we have determined that the galaxy is ready to learn the truth. The structure pulsed with new energy, and suddenly the Starweaver's sensors were overwhelmed with data. Star charts appeared showing cosmic anomalies moving through the void between galaxies. Simulations played out showing entire solar systems being consumed by something that defied description. "What you're seeing," Nexus continued, "is why we transformed ourselves. An entity approaches, one that devours not just matter and energy, but space-time itself. We left this realm to prepare, to evolve into beings capable of fighting such a threat. And now we return, seeking allies among the civilizations that have risen in our absence." Captain Naira felt the weight of history pressing down upon her. Her ship, her crew, had just stumbled upon the greatest discovery since the finding of the first human ruins. This wasn't just first contact. This was the return of humanity itself, transformed into something beyond their comprehension. "The choice is yours," Nexus said, its form beginning to fade. "Return to your people. Tell them what you found." In 3 standard cycles, representatives from every spacefaring civilization will be welcomed here to learn the full truth. The time has come for all sentient life to stand together, or fall separately. As the hologram vanished, Captain Naira turned to her crew. Their mission had changed from simple exploration to something far more momentous. They carried now not just the truth about humanity's disappearance, but the warning of a threat that could end all existence. "Plot a course for Arvani Prime," she ordered, her scales now pulsing with determined purpose. "Maximum speed. We have a galaxy to warn." The Starweaver turned away from the massive structure, its engines flaring to life. Behind them, Waypoint Alpha continued its ancient vigil, a testament to human ingenuity and foresight. The signal that had drawn them here continued to pulse, calling out to other explorers who might venture into this forgotten sector of space. Humanity had not been defeated or disappeared. They had simply been preparing. And now, as an unstoppable force approached the galaxy, they were returning to help defend all life against extinction. The real question was, would the galaxy be ready to accept their help and the changes that would come with it? Awakening the giant. 3 cycles had passed like a cosmic blink. The space around Waypoint Alpha now buzzed with vessels of every known species in the galaxy. Massive Krillian warships, their biological hulls pulsing with internal light, hung alongside the crystalline vessels of the Arvani. Sleek Tauri scout ships darted between the gathered fleet, their quantum drives leaving brief tears in reality. Captain Naira Ved stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed diplomatic station, watching as more ships arrived through fold space. Her report to the Arvani High Council had sparked a chain reaction across the galaxy. Now, representatives from over 300 species had gathered to witness humanity's return. "Quite the gathering, isn't it?" The voice came from behind her, and Naira turned to find Nexus materializing. The quantum consciousness had taken to appearing more consistently human-like, though its form still shimmered with impossible energies. "Your people did well in spreading the word. There are still those who doubt," Naira admitted, her scales shifting to a thoughtful blue. "Some believe this is an elaborate deception. Others fear what humanity's return might mean for the current galactic order." Nexus smiled, a gesture that somehow conveyed both amusement and ancient wisdom. "Fear of change is universal, but what comes next will change everything, regardless of doubt or fear." The station's warning systems activated suddenly, bathing the observation deck in crimson light. Outside, the gathered fleet shifted in formation as space itself began to warp. Waypoint Alpha, the massive structure that had drawn them all here, was transforming again. "Right on schedule," Nexus said, its form growing more distinct. "Watch closely, Captain. Few have ever witnessed the awakening of a Dyson sphere." The structure's outer layers peeled away like the petals of a massive flower, revealing layers of technology that defied comprehension. Energy coursed through previously hidden circuits, creating patterns that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The nearby star's light bent and twisted as new gravitational fields came into play. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Keth, who had joined them on the observation deck. His cybernetic enhancements were struggling to process what they were seeing. The energy requirements alone would. Impossible by your current understanding of physics, Nexus corrected gently. Humanity's evolution wasn't just biological or digital. We reconceived the fundamental laws of reality itself. As they watched, the structure continued its transformation. What had appeared to be a moon-sized station was revealing itself to be merely the control node of something far larger. Invisible fields became visible, showing the true scale of human engineering. An entire solar system encased in overlapping fields of controlled space-time. The Dyson sphere is not just a power collection system, Nexus explained as gasps of awe echoed through the diplomatic station. It's a dimensional anchor point, a foundation for what comes next. New signals began broadcasting across all frequencies. Throughout the gathered fleet, ship systems responded automatically, receiving and integrating data that had laid dormant in their computers for centuries. Hidden protocols in reverse-engineered human technology were awakening. We left seeds of our knowledge in every piece of technology we left behind, Nexus revealed. Your civilizations have been unconsciously preparing for this moment for centuries. Every human artifact you studied, every technology you rebuilt, they were all parts of a greater whole. The gathered representatives watched in stunned silence as their own ships began to transform. New systems came online, systems their builders hadn't known existed. The very nature of their technology was evolving before their eyes. We couldn't simply give you our most advanced technology, Nexus continued. You needed to develop, to grow, to understand the principles on your own terms. But we could leave you breadcrumbs, guide you along paths that would prepare you for this moment. In the space around them, the transformations continued. The Dyson sphere was now fully active, its energy output beyond measurement. The gathered fleet hung suspended in its fields, their ships incorporating centuries of dormant human innovation. But why? Asked Naira, her diplomatic training struggling with the scale of what she was witnessing. Why such an elaborate plan? Because what comes next requires unity, Nexus replied. Its form now fully stabilized into something both human and more than human. The entity that approaches doesn't just threaten one species or one galaxy. It threatens all of existence. Fighting it requires more than just advanced technology. It requires all sentient life to work as one. New holograms appeared throughout the station, showing the approaching threat in terrible detail. A void that consumed everything in its path, growing larger with each galaxy it devoured. The readings suggested it would reach their galaxy within one standard year. This is why we transformed ourselves, Nexus explained. Why we left these waypoints behind. We spent centuries becoming something new, something capable of fighting this threat. But we cannot do it alone. Every species, every civilization, has something unique to contribute. Together, we might have a chance. The gathered representatives were silent, processing the magnitude of what they were being shown. Centuries of human planning were coming to fruition. The mysterious disappearance, the scattered artifacts, the guided development of technology. It had all been preparation for this moment. The choice stands before you all, Nexus announced, its voice carrying to every ship and station in the system. Join us in the defense of all existence, or try to face the void alone. But know this, humanity has returned not as conquerors or saviors, but as equals. We offer partnership in the face of extinction. Captain Naira looked out at the gathered fleet, at the fully awakened Dyson sphere, at the transformed ships hanging in space. In 3 cycles, the galaxy had changed forever. In 1 year, they would face the greatest threat in the history of existence. And humanity, far from being extinct, had spent centuries preparing them all for this moment. The real question was, would it be enough? The coming storm. The void between galaxies was no longer empty. Through quantum telescopes and dimensional sensors, the gathered species watched as something massive moved through the darkness. It consumed light itself, leaving nothing but absolute emptiness in its wake. The entity that humanity had prepared for was finally revealing itself. Admiral Call of the Krillian Empire stood aboard his flagship, the living vessel's neural networks pulsing with anxiety. Around him, the combined fleet of 300 species had assembled for their first demonstration of humanity's defensive protocols. The massive Dyson sphere hummed with power behind them, its energy output now focused on a single point in space. "The simulation begins in 3 minutes," announced Nexus, its quantum form simultaneously present on every ship in the fleet. Remember, this is not just about learning to use the new technology. It's about understanding how to think beyond conventional spacetime. The gathered fleet had spent the last month integrating the awakened human technologies into their ships and crews. What had once been simple warships and science vessels were now hybrid craft, capable of manipulating the fabric of reality itself. But theory and practice were very different things. "First wave, take position," Admiral Call commanded, his voice carrying across the quantum communication network. Captain Naira Ved, now commanding the upgraded Starweaver, led her squadron into formation. The Arvani vessel's crystalline hulls now pulsed with dimensional energy, ready to tear holes in reality itself. "The entity cannot be destroyed conventionally," Nexus reminded them as the fleet moved into position. "It exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. To fight it, you must learn to do the same." The simulation began with a ripple in spacetime. A perfect replica of the approaching entity materialized before the fleet, a writhing mass of void that bent light around it in impossible ways. Even knowing it wasn't real, many crew members felt their species' equivalent of nausea just looking at it. "Begin the attack pattern," Admiral Call ordered. The first wave of ships engaged their new weapons systems, firing beams of concentrated reality that cut through the dimensional barriers. The void entity responded, tentacles of nothingness reaching out to grab the nearest vessels. "Quantum shift now," Captain Naira called out. Her squadron executed the maneuver they'd been practicing, shifting partially out of normal spacetime, becoming energy and matter simultaneously. The void's tentacles passed harmlessly through them. "Good," Nexus commented, its form shifting between ships as it observed. "But remember, in a real battle, the entity will be able to follow you through dimensional shifts. You must coordinate your movements across all possible states of existence." The battle continued, with ships phasing in and out of reality, firing weapons that didn't so much destroy as rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. The void entity in the simulation fought back, its attacks becoming more sophisticated as the AI controlling it learned from each encounter. "Second wave, execute pattern Omega," Admiral Call commanded. A group of Tari ships moved forward, their quantum drives creating a web of interconnected reality tiers. The void entity began to fragment, caught between multiple dimensions, but something was wrong. The simulation was changing, evolving beyond its parameters. The void entity was adapting faster than predicted, learning to counter their tactics almost before they executed them. "Emergency protocol," Nexus announced, its voice carrying an edge of genuine concern. "This is no longer a simulation. The real entity has made contact with our systems. It's reaching through the quantum network." The battle suddenly became very real. What had been a training exercise was now a desperate fight to prevent the entity from gaining a foothold in their reality. Ships began executing emergency shutdowns, trying to sever their connection to the quantum network. "Hold position," Admiral Call roared across the communication channels. "This is what we trained for. Execute convergence pattern Delta." The fleet moved as one, their movements synchronized across multiple dimensions. The Dyson sphere behind them pulsed with new energy, creating a quantum barrier between the entity's influence and their reality. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a silent explosion of anti-light, the entity's presence was forced out of their systems. The fleet hung in space, crews shaken but alive. What had been meant as a simple training exercise had become their first real contact with the enemy. "Now you understand," Nexus said, its form stabilizing across all ships simultaneously. The entity is not just a force of destruction. It's intelligent, adaptive, and it has been watching us prepare. This was its first test of our defenses. The gathered fleet began running diagnostics, checking for any lingering effects of the entity's intrusion. But something had changed among the crews. The reality of what they faced had finally sunk in. How long? Admiral Call asked, his ship's biological systems still trembling from the encounter. Based on this interaction, we have less time than we thought, Nexus replied. The entity is accelerating its approach. We now have perhaps 3 months before it reaches the galaxy's edge. Captain Naira's voice came across the command channel, steady despite what they'd just experienced. Then we have 3 months to perfect our defense. We've seen what we're up against now. We know it can be fought. Yes, Nexus agreed, its form now showing traces of the battle's energy patterns. But this was just a fraction of its consciousness, reaching through our own training systems. The real battle will be fought across every dimension, every possible state of existence, simultaneously. The fleet began to regroup, ships moving back into defensive formations around the Dyson sphere. The training would continue, but now with the weight of real experience behind it. They had survived their first contact with the entity, but the real test was still to come. All ships, resume battle positions, Admiral Call commanded. We train until every crew member can fight in their sleep. We have 3 months to become an army capable of fighting across dimensions. Let's make them count. As the fleet moved to comply, Nexus broadcasted one final message across all channels. Remember, this entity has consumed entire galaxies, but it has never encountered a galaxy defended by humanity and its allies. Together, we have a chance. Apart, we are already dead. The void between stars seemed darker now, as if the knowledge of what approached had somehow deepened the darkness. But in that void, the combined fleet of 300 species continued their preparation, their ships dancing between dimensions as they learned to fight an enemy that defied comprehension. The storm was coming, but this time, the galaxy would not face it unprepared. Evolution's edge. The laboratory aboard the Dyson sphere hummed with energy as Dr. Keth studied the transformation taking place before him. In a quantum-sealed chamber, an Arvani volunteer was undergoing the process that humanity had perfected centuries ago. The subject's crystalline form was shifting, becoming something that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The integration is proceeding exactly as predicted, Nexus observed, its form shifting between various spectral analyses. Your species' natural crystalline structure makes the transition particularly stable. Around them, similar chambers house volunteers from dozens of species. Each was taking the momentous step of following humanity's path, not exactly as humans had done, but in ways uniquely suited to their own biology. The Krillian's biological ships were becoming one with their crews. The Tauri were merging with their quantum technology. Each species was finding its own path to transcendence. 2 months until contact, Captain Naira noted, watching her fellow Arvani through the chamber walls. Will we be ready in time? The question hung in the air as alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Admiral Call's voice echoed through the quantum network. All forces to battle stations. We have a breach in Sector 7. The void entity had sent another probe, larger this time. Through the station's quantum sensors, they watched as it tore through the fabric of space-time, consuming everything in its path. But this time, they were better prepared. Initiate Protocol Omega, Nexus commanded. The transformed ships of the fleet moved into position, their crews now existing partially outside normal spacetime. The Dyson sphere pulsed with energy, creating a network of quantum barriers. What followed was a battle unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships phased between dimensions, firing weapons that reorganize reality itself. The void probe reached out with tentacles of nothingness, only to find its targets shifting between states of existence faster than it could adapt. Push it back, Admiral Call ordered. The Krillian bioships, now evolved beyond their original forms, created a living wall of quantum energy. The Tari vessels wove patterns in space-time itself, trapping segments of the probe in closed loops of reality. Dr. Keth watched in fascination as data poured in from the battle. The entity isn't just fighting us. He realized his cybernetic systems processing the information. It's studying us, learning our capabilities. Correct? Nexus confirmed. Each probe it sends is more sophisticated than the last. It's testing our defenses, preparing for the main assault. But in doing so, it's also showing us more about itself. The battle reached its climax as the combined fleet executed a maneuver that would have been impossible just weeks ago. Hundreds of ships, moving in perfect synchronization across multiple dimensions, created a cascade of quantum effects that literally rewrote the laws of physics in an expanding sphere. The void probe, caught in the effect, was forced back into its own dimension and sealed away. As the fleet regrouped, Captain Naira received reports from across the galaxy. More Dyson spheres were awakening. More species were choosing to undergo the transformation. What had started with humanity's return was becoming a galaxy-wide renaissance of evolution and innovation. The transformation chambers are ready for the next group, Dr. Keth announced, his own form beginning to shimmer with quantum potential. He had undergone the process days ago, his cybernetic enhancements providing unique insights into the merger of organic and quantum states. In the chambers, the volunteers were completing their transformations. Each emerged change, yet still fundamentally themselves. They were the first of their kinds, pioneers in an evolution that would reshape the galaxy. We're approaching a critical threshold, Nexus observed, its form displaying complex mathematical patterns that describe the galaxy's transformation. Once enough species undergo the change, we'll reach a quantum resonance that will make our reality itself resistant to the void entity's influence. The station shuddered as the Dyson sphere channeled another burst of energy, strengthening the quantum barriers around the galaxy. The transformed ships of the fleet moved in new patterns, their crews learning to exist in multiple states of reality simultaneously. "Show me the latest projections," Captain Naira requested. A holographic display materialized, showing the spread of transformation across the galaxy. Points of light represented species choosing to evolve, creating a growing network of quantum-enhanced civilizations. "We're beyond the point of no return now," Admiral Call noted, his consciousness spanning both his physical form and his living ship. "The galaxy itself is changing. Even if we defeat the void entity, nothing will ever be the same." That was always the plan, Nexus revealed. Humanity didn't just evolve to fight this threat. We evolved because it was the next step for all conscious life. The void entity simply forced us to accelerate our timeline and share our discovery with the galaxy. Through the quantum network, they could feel the changes rippling across space. Species that had been rivals for millennia were linking their consciousness, sharing experiences and knowledge across the dimensional barriers. The galaxy was becoming something new, not a collection of separate civilizations, but an interconnected quantum web of evolved life. "The next probe will be stronger," Dr. Keth predicted, his enhanced senses detecting subtle shifts in the quantum field. "The entity is learning, adapting. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last." "Then we must evolve faster," Captain Naira declared. She had made her decision. "Prepare a transformation chamber. It's time I joined the next stage of our evolution." As she stepped into the chamber, Naira felt the weight of history around her. Through the quantum field, she could sense the hope and determination of billions of beings across the galaxy. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the right to become something greater. The transformation began, and with it, another piece of humanity's grand design fell into place. The galaxy was changing, species by species, ship by ship, mind by mind. And in the void between galaxies, the entity approached, unaware that what it sought to devour was becoming something entirely new. The edge of evolution beckoned, and the galaxy was answering its call. Guardians of Tomorrow. The void entity arrived ahead of schedule. One moment, the quantum sensors showed it still weeks away from the galaxy's edge. The next, it simply appeared, its vast form tearing through multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was larger than they had predicted, its darkness deeper than any simulation had shown. All forces, battle positions. Admiral Call's consciousness resonated through the quantum network, reaching every transformed ship and being in the Allied fleet. The Dyson spheres activated in perfect synchronization, their combined energy output creating a dimensional barrier around the galaxy's spiral arms. Captain Naira, her consciousness now existing across multiple states of reality, felt the response of countless civilizations. Through the quantum field, she could sense billions of evolved beings linking their minds and powers together. The galaxy itself seemed to pulse with their united purpose. "It's trying to breach the barrier," Dr. Keth reported. His cybernetic systems merged with the quantum network. The void entity had split into countless tendrils, each probing for weaknesses in their defenses. Where the tendrils touched the barrier, reality itself began to unravel. "Hold the line," Nexus commanded, its form now visible across all dimensions simultaneously. "Remember your training. Exist in all states at once. Do not let it isolate you in a single reality." The battle began in earnest. The void entity launched its first real assault, not just attacking their ships and barriers, but attempting to devour the quantum field itself. This was why humanity had evolved. Conventional weapons and defenses meant nothing against an enemy that could simply erase the laws of physics that made them work. But the transformed fleet was ready. Ships phased between dimensions, their weapons firing streams of concentrated reality that forced the void entity's tendrils back into normal space. The Krillian bioships created living walls of quantum energy, while Tauri vessels wove complex patterns in spacetime that trapped and isolated sections of the entity. "It's adapting," Captain Nira called out as she led her squadron through a complex series of dimensional shifts. The void entity was learning, changing its tactics faster than they could respond. For every tendril they forced back, two more appeared, each using a different approach to breach their defenses. Then came the moment they had feared. The entity found a weak point in their barrier, a place where the quantum field fluctuated just enough to create an opening. Through this breach poured what could only be described as anti-reality, a force that began to consume everything it touched. "Initiate Protocol Omega," Admiral Call commanded. This was the maneuver they had practiced countless times, the ultimate expression of their combined evolution. Every ship, every being, every particle of transformed matter in the galaxy began to move in perfect synchronization. The Dyson spheres pulsed with impossible energy as the transformed fleet executed their attack. Reality itself began to fold and unfold in patterns that defied comprehension. The void entity, for the first time, showed signs of confusion as its targets existed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "Now we show it why humanity chose to evolve," Nexus declared, its form becoming a conduit for the combined power of billions of transformed minds. Not just to fight, but to create something entirely new. The quantum field that connected the galaxy's civilizations began to change, becoming something more than just a network. It was becoming a new layer of reality itself, one created and maintained by the combined consciousness of countless evolved beings. The void entity, designed to consume normal spacetime, found itself unable to process this new form of existence. Captain Naira felt the moment of transformation as her consciousness merged with the greater whole. She was still herself, but also part of something vast beyond comprehension. Through the quantum field, she could sense every other transformed being experiencing the same expansion of awareness. "Push it back." The command came not from any one leader, but from the united will of the galaxy itself. The transformed fleet moved as a single entity, their combined power focusing on the void entity from every possible dimension simultaneously. The battle reached its climax as reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The void entity, faced with a form of existence it had never encountered before, began to fragment. Its attempts to consume their dimension were met with a force that didn't just resist, but actively rewrote the laws of physics around it. We are not just defending our galaxy. Nexus broadcasted across all frequencies and dimensions. We are becoming something the universe has never seen before. We are evolution itself. The void entity made one final desperate assault, concentrating all its power into a single point of absolute negation. But where this attack met the quantum field, something unprecedented occurred. The combined consciousness of the galaxy's transformed beings created a new type of spacetime, one that the entity couldn't consume or comprehend. In that moment, the tide turned. The void entity, for the first time in its ancient existence, began to retreat. But the transformed fleet wasn't content to simply drive it away. They pursued it through dimension after dimension, their combined power forcing it further and further from the galaxy. Finally, with a reality-shaking pulse of quantum energy, they sealed the entity away in a pocket of space-time that existed outside normal reality. The threat that humanity had spent centuries preparing for was contained, trapped in a prison of evolved consciousness and transformed matter. As the quantum field stabilized and the transformed fleet regrouped, a new awareness settled over the galaxy. They had not just survived, they had transcended. The barriers between species had dissolved, replaced by a deep understanding that crossed all dimensional boundaries. And now, Nexus announced, its form shimming with the energy of victory. The real work begins. We have evolved not just to fight, but to explore what we have become. The galaxy is no longer just a collection of separate civilizations. It is something new, something greater. Captain Naira, her consciousness spanning multiple realities, felt the truth of these words. Through the quantum field, she could sense the excitement and wonder of billions of transformed beings as they began to explore their new capabilities. The threat was contained, but their evolution was just beginning. The galaxy pulsed with new life and purpose. Humanity had not just saved them from extinction. They had guided them to the next stage of existence. And in the vast, transformed space that had once been normal reality, countless evolved beings began to create something that had never existed before, a civilization that spanned not just space and time, but consciousness itself. The age of separate species was over. The age of quantum civilization had begun.